So, already in Article 14, we saw that the confession is talking about the corruption of mankind, the creation and fall of man. But here in Article 15, it's a bit clearer and trained specifically on the doctrine of original sin and how that affects man and is passed down from generation to generation. So it states, we believe that by the disobedience of Adam, original sin has been spread through the whole human race. It's a corruption of all nature and inherited depravity, which even infects small infants in their mother's womb, and the root which produces in man every sort of sin. It's therefore so vile and enormous in God's sight that it is enough to condemn the human race. And it is not abolished or wholly uprooted even by baptism, seeing that sin constantly boils forth as though from a contaminated spring. Nevertheless, it is not imputed to God's children for their condemnation, but is forgiven by his grace and mercy, not to put them to sleep, but so that the awareness of this corruption might often make believers groan as they long to be set free from the, quote, body of this death. Therefore, we reject the error of the Pelagians, who say that this sin is nothing else than a matter of imitation. Alrighty, a few quick things here about Article 15. So, in order to properly understand the Christian faith and what it addresses, what it does, etc., one has to clearly understand the problem that the Christian faith addresses. Now, the problem, of course, is sin. But what does that mean? There are two main ways of understanding that. One is the way that Pelagius did, and Pelagius is a man. He's actually from the British Islands, and he lived in the 4th century, 4th and 5th century. So it's very very early in the church, but it's after Constantine adopted or allowed for Christianity to be no longer illegal throughout the empire. Anyway, Pelagius believed that we are sinners. In other words, guilty before God because we sin, because we have committed sins, and that original sin only refers to Adam's first sin. It doesn't refer to something that changes our nature. It's not like our nature was affected by that. The reason that children sin like their parents is because they imitate them. So they learn sin from their parents, and therefore they sin. And the reason that the world is full of sin is because of imitation, not because anything substantive has been done to our human nature. That's one way of understanding the sin problem. And that then, of course, changes the nature of grace and what needs to happen. And in fact, Pelagius, he believed that we had everything we needed to live perfectly, just as we are, and that grace is demonstrated in God's telling us what living perfectly looks like. And one can achieve salvation or perfection by fully imitating Christ, and everybody has what they need to do that. So that's how he saw the faith addressing the problem, and those things go together. But that's not what the scriptures say, and the confession is very clear about the fact that it's not, as Pelagius thought, that we're sinners or guilty before God because we have committed sins. It's just the opposite. That the reason we commit sins is because we are inherently sinners, that our human nature has been distorted and bound in sin. As the article says, this corruption is a corruption of all nature. That means our complete human nature, and it's the root which produces in man every sort of sin. So we commit sins because we're inherently sinful. So that is the real problem, and that sets the stage for, okay, so how can that kind of problem be solved? It's not just a matter of giving us a list of things that we should do. It's going to need to be solved some other way, and obviously the confession will get more into that as it moves forward. But it is an example, and it helps us understand how man is, even from conception, already thoroughly sinful, even though the sin in him hasn't sprung forth. So a baby has not had opportunity to express its sin. That doesn't change the fact that the infant is thoroughly sinful, because they are, or they have within them, their center of their being is a fallen human nature, one that's bound in sin. This is also helpful in understanding, just those who don't hear the gospel, or etc. Are they saved? Well, the scriptures would say, no, you're not, and this is all related to God's plan, and we'll get into that later in the doctrines on election and that kind of thing. But people are already thoroughly sinful at the moment of conception because their nature is thoroughly sinful. Okay, that's the point. Another thing here that's important to note is that it's this problem that is at the heart of what is solved then by the work of God in salvation. So even though the article points out that sin nature is not completely taken away by baptism, in other words, by by being brought into the Christian faith, it's not the ongoing existence of that old nature is not held against us when we're in the faith. It's forgiven through Christ. But it says not in order to put us to sleep, meaning not so that we are apathetic and say, that's just my old nature coming out again, and so it's no big deal, it's all been forgiven, I don't need to worry about it. No, but so that we can, this is what we fight against our whole lives. And so, as it says, that we might groan and long to be set free from the body of death. So this old man, this is the Romans 7 situation with Paul saying, the good that I want to do, that's that what I don't do, and the evil that I don't want to do, that I keep on doing. And so it must no longer be me, he said, meaning the new him in Christ. It's sin within me. So it's my old nature. It's still, in a sense, me. It's my old nature, but it's not the new me that God has made. So we're battling that sinful nature for the rest of our lives. All right, so there's a lot there, but it's really important stuff, and it determines so much of how we understand human nature, human beings, and what we need. All right, several quick things from Article 15.